Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to a virtual discussion with the North Carolina Museum of Art. My name is Amanda Maples and I'm curator of African art at the NCMA. I know there are a lot of friends and colleagues out there, as well as many of you who might be new to the NCMA, whether virtually or in person. So a warm welcome to all of you. I know we have quite an attendance today. So this was originally scheduled to be a live event as part of my exhibition Good as Gold, Fashioning Senegalese Women. But due to COVID-19, we've had to pivot like a lot of museums and events. But I think it actually makes for an even more exciting event, a broader audience, of course, and definitely a greater selection of artists and panelists that we were able to bring in today. So that's really exciting. So as you know, today we're talking about one of my all-time favorite series with three of my favorite artists. The series is called Afripedia. It's a documentary series that showcases the creative buzz happening in cities all over the African continent. It focuses on different kinds of creatives, not just visual artists, video game producers, musicians, hula hoopers. So it's a really broad smattering of creatives working in on the African continent, but also in elsewhere in the world. So the two episodes I chose for today were Dakar, which is the capital of Senegal, of course, which includes Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, as well as New York City. So I hope each of you have had a chance to do your homework to watch the videos, but I will be showing a few short clips today to help remind you of some of the things that you might have seen or if you didn't get a chance to watch them. You may have also noticed that New York is not on the continent of Africa, so a bit of a standout for the Afripedia series. The reason I chose New York and Senegal is that I wanted to demonstrate that artists are, of course, citizens of the world. And I think of African artists especially as not being siloed or confined to the continent, but as living and working in the diaspora all over the world as global Afropolitans. So Africa is not separate and it should be part of our everyday lives all over the world. Further, to me, artists reveal the world to us. So that's something I think about a lot. And that revelation becomes that much more poignant and relevant when it's articulated from new homes or new contact zones or in various ways all over the world. So it's a global approach that still necessarily maintains a specificity. So that's important too. I also thought that there was a synergy between those two episodes. So there's a Senegalese photographer living in New York. There's also an intersection of sartorial expression and photography. And that is evident in both of those episodes. And of course, in the work of all three of our guest artists today, Selly Raby Kane, Alun Be, and Omar Victor Diop. So I think all of you have also lived elsewhere in the world and have incorporated these multiplicities into your own identity, practice, and worldview. Further, I really think that photography, design, and fashion are all, they're some of the most powerful and compelling artistic expressions coming out of the continent today and globally. So I think it's especially exciting to have you three here today and to consider the Afripedia series. So with that said, I'd like to introduce the three artists that are here with us today. First, we have Selly Raby Kane, who is a multidisciplinary artist. There she is. Filmmaker and fashion designer. Her work deals with themes of the eclectic, the urban. She's definitely focused on Dakar as a city and a space that encourages and influences her work. The futuristic and the surreal. Next, we have Omar Victor Diop, who's a self-taught photographer, studio photographer concerned with the diversity of African culture and experience both on the continent and in the diaspora. So again, he's kind of bridging worlds too. And last but not least, Alun Be is an artist and architect whose work deals with the themes of intergenerationality, female empowerment, and technology. He's also a musician and numerous other things, kind of a Renaissance man. So all three of you work in various different genres and modes. So it's especially neat to have you all here. And all three of you, of course, live and work in Dakar and know each other and work in similar modes and have collaborated or shared ideas. So welcome again to the three.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
I'm so excited. It's going to be a really lively and inspiring conversation. I think all three of you inspire me. So, as far as format is concerned, I divided out three themes I saw emerge in the series and in all of your work. And I'll show a few clips relating to each of these, followed by a few questions. Then I'd like to finish up with enough time for some audience questions. So first off, and I think probably most importantly, I noticed that there's an intersectionality, like a cross-pollinating between photography, both fine art and studio, and fashion, And I think the practices and the audiences necessarily vary, but I'm interested in hearing from each of you about the relationship between these genres. But given that, first let's look at a few short clips to remind our audience some of the things that they have seen and that relate to that question. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully technology works for me. Yeah.
I've been working on this portrait series for about a year now. I have around 40 portraits of people that I call samples of this creative generation that I belong to. It's called the Studio of Vanities. I came up with that name because I think for me it sums up the spirit of portraiture here in West Africa. People always tell me that the main thing that makes my work so recognizable is the use of colors and the use of patterns, and then the attitudes, because people always pose in a very official way. People are not really themselves. They're not really smiling. They're not sad. They're not that serious. You have the feeling that people are posing for eternity and that they want this picture to be shown 200 years away from now. And this is also the tradition we have here when it comes to portrait. You call a photographer or you go to a photographer's studio and you take your best outfits and you make yourself look the best you can because you want this picture to remain in the family for the next 200 years. And, you know, this is a tradition I'm trying to preserve.
I know that there are things I need to express, but I don't know what exactly yet, so I'm exploring all the things that come to me. I try to, build a strong fashion brand from Dakar. I want it to spread throughout Africa, to spread throughout the world. This is why I'm doing it. I think we will succeed in, making this brand become international. This is really what I want.
So I'm going to pause it there on actually a photograph that Alun and Selly created together. So I wanted to see some of the work that they've done. No one else, I think, has really seen that. It's for the exhibition. So you'll notice that Omar and Selly were both in the Afripedia series that we're focusing on today. But I wanted to also, of course, share some of the work that Alun has created since he's here with us. And I wanted to make sure that you all saw some of those things. So just clicking through a few of these, so you have a sense of that. Are these coming through?
Yes.
Okay, good. So just some installation shots so you can see some of the series he's created. And all three of our artists have, of course, created other projects since Afripedia. So I hope we have time to get into that today as well. But without further ado, I can actually turn this over more to them with a few questions. You've heard me talk quite enough. So again, I want to think about this intersectionality again, this cross-pollination between fashion design, photography, and how they vary. The audiences vary, but they still intersect in some ways. At least that's what I see in your work. So I wanted to think about fashion and fine arts photography and whether or not they intersect. So are they necessarily separate? Or do you think they can or that they should intersect? Maybe Selly can go first.
Yes. Hello, everybody. It's great to see you all. Great to see you, Victor. It's been ages.
I know.
And thank you, Amanda, for making this conversation possible. So regarding the intersection of fashion and fine arts photography, I think when I can take my example, when I began fashion, photography was not the first medium. I think matter, tailoring, focusing on the collection was the first urge that I had as a brand new fashion designer. But at some point I realized that bringing the two together is what makes it possible to create garments that people wear, but to infuse history, to make the garments become some type of archive. And I think that's the main preoccupation that I would have today as a brand, is to make sure that the study of the city, the study of the car, reading about the environment I was born in is I don't know how the English word is, but is contained inside the garments, and that the garments become something that fixes this history. And I think this is one of my main preoccupation, and photography is the best alter ego to make that possible.
Mm-hmm. I think we have a lot of French-speaking audience members today too, so I'm sure you can throw the words in there if you need to.
Bonjour, bonjour.
Yeah. So Alun, did you have anything to add to that, or Omar?
Yes, yes. This is Alun. Just wanted to say that, yes, I think that they are deeply connected. Almost want to say that they are rooted in the same soil, because they keep intersecting, they feed from each other. And on a personal level, I know, I could even say that to both of you, Omar and Selly, I know that at numerous times I've been influenced by your work, but in a very unconscious manner. Just the presence of just being around it had an influence on my take on my approach as an artist.
Thanks, B.
Yeah, I think there are. Hi, this is Omar. Welcome to this chat. I call it a get together.
Yes,
I think
both
disciplines are deeply intertwined, because what we have in common as photographers and fashion designers is that we are witnesses. We everything that we put out is a sort of testimony to what we have gone through as a human society. It's also a photography. It's a snapshot of where we are right now, but it also is a look at our aspirations, and myself, I wanted to become a photographer. I became a photographer because I wanted to be an artist like someone like Alexander McQueen or Selly Raby Kane. So it's important. And I think if I had the training she had, I probably would have been a fashion designer. In that sense, photography is a bit more democratic, because it's easier to be a self-taught photographer than a self-taught fashion designer. So yeah, for me, it's almost the same discipline.
That makes me wonder, Selly, are you self-taught? I got the impression from the Afripedia that you were, but could you talk a bit more about the training you might have gotten?
Yeah, I'm almost self-taught. Let's say that I did a fashion and business school, so I didn't go to a une école de style, as we say it in French. So I'm not self-taught in the business of fashion, but regarding everything that I have, creative skills, I learned it before going to fashion school. Drawing, I started dressing my dolls way before I sat in a fashion school. So it's Victor, you can do your fashion line whenever you feel like it, and I'm sure you're gonna drop something on us like a bomb.
Don't tempt me.
I would love to see that. So I think another thing that came out of those clips is that idea of branding. And definitely in all of your work, there's a certain essence to it that is recognizable. So I wanted to ask you, do you find that branding is something that you do consciously as artists, or as photographers, or as fashion designers? Alun.
Yeah, definitely. Branding is almost at the core of what we do, because beyond everything, we are entrepreneurs. But I want to say also that at the core of our message, we're trying to redefine, or at least give a more authentic view of what is Africa to us, at least our Africa. And when I think of that, the first thing that comes to mind is what we have to show to the world that product that we want to put on the shelf. We are proud of it. So, and it's a gift too, you know, it's like, here who we are. And that gift better be well wrapped, you know, the wrapped is important. So that people would be like, you know, curious about like what's inside of it. And I think that's the problem, is that people usually like stay on the surface. They will see like, you know, cliche images of Africa, and they would like just like live with that and be like, all right, this is Africa. So, you know, surprise them with like a beautiful package so they could finally like get to see what's inside, you know, like dig deeper.
Yeah, I think all three of you are definitely articulating your version of Africa and Dakar specifically, or West Africa as well. And you're articulating that message in a really interesting way. And all three of you are thinking very positively about the future and representing that in the present, and articulating again that message to push people a little bit further, to kind of broaden what they think of an African experience to be. So Omar, did you want to comment on branding?
Yeah, there is a great branding element to whatever we put out, because when you look at, I mean, we're visual artists, so even Selly, mostly Selly actually, we have competition. Our competition is the stereotypes, the zebras and giraffes and everything that goes south on this continent, Wakanda, and all these things, which are, you know, this is not our reality. You know, it's an interpretation of the African experience or the African future. It's fine, but every pair of eye that we catch at any time of the day has seen hundreds of other images, and many of which are images of Africa that are not the reality that we want to share. So you need to have your visual signature, you need to have your branding right. I was born on social media. I was born on Facebook. You know, Facebook told me that I was a photographer. I didn't know. So of course, I learned from that, and I learned from my background in the corporate world. You need a brand, but keep it honest and keep it authentic. You know, you're not selling a product, you're sharing a reality.
Love that. Selly?
Yes, I think branding started when I created the brand very organically. I started branding for fashion, doing visual arts, doing for collages, doing photo shoots, and just pushing the visual envelope and integrating all the influences that I had from watching Dury Diomandretti, from listening to many tales, urban legends from fantastic cinema all around the world. So I think there was a moment where I needed to make the synthesis of all the images I have absorbed, and to make sure that that absorption is linked with the fashion product that I was putting out. So I think very, very early that the fantasy world, the need, some type of urge for speculation was infused into the brand. And it started as something quite like a research. And at some point, it just became the DNA of the brand, because the core of what I want to share with the world is the blend between immaterial patrimony, urban Dakar, a curiosity for history, for heritage. Donc, yeah, it's important to make sure that when you want to share who you are, that you do it with the tools that suit you the best. Mm-hmm. And as Victor said, that do it truthfully and authentically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent. So I think I'm going to ask one quick question to Selly and Alun, and then I'll move into the next kind of set of thematic questions. And because I showed that photograph recently at the end of the first clips, I wanted to ask Selly and Alun about that collaboration. You recently collaborated to create this sort of blended fashion fine art photo with an ensemble that is meant to be part of a museum exhibition. So I wanted to know how conducting a photography shoot like that differed, or may have differed, from studio or a straight fashion experience. So it was a different location and instructions to the model, lighting, audience. So how did that project kind of, what instructions did you get from it, or what impressions did you get from doing that?
Yes.
Yeah,
So I say the process was interesting for me. You know, I'm a maximalist at heart. More is always more. And then I had the conversation with Alun Be was interesting because he made me see the project we were working on as something that wasn't necessarily going to be served by the objects that we were adding on the model, but by the space that we were living, and that space is exactly what creates the feel. That's where your message and where the reminiscence is actually, and the fact that I came from a space of creating saturated universe, and he came from a quelque chose de plus dépouillé. I think it was an interesting conversation, and what I took out of the experience is that telling a story, that the void and emptiness tells as well a story as beautifully as, you know, maximalism can tell stories. So that's what I took out of it.
Yeah, I love the fact that you use the word reminisce, because I think that's, the key word, at least for me, was memories. We had to tap into, we had to go beyond the beauty on the surface, which is again, like, you know, going back to the previous question about branding, you know, we need that beauty because beauty attracts. But then once you have like the attention, what do you show? You know, how deep the roots goes, like sink in the soil. And so to me, location was key. Me and Selly, we went on location and we actually found this like place that was about to be gentrified. And so they removed the people from that place, but there was still like pieces from the past in those houses where we actually shot that. And it was just so many memories just beyond the walls. I mean, there was just lots of objects all over the place. And I remember that as we worked, and Selly was really like, you know, staging our model into the mood of the shoot. We started like tapping into memories, tapping into our imagination, and trying to, like, I remember like we were telling her to like think of her past, her family that like once lived there, even though she didn't live in that place. And she kind of like played that game with us, and she could resonate with that memory. And I think that brought a lot of authenticity to the shoot. And I think at the end of the day, it goes back to that, you know, people will feel if it's true or if it's not true, what you're trying to convey. Yeah.
Well, and the reason I asked about that is because of the last thing. So it'll be the first image that we see again when I share the screen for this next bit. So I want to think about another theme that I saw emerge during these episodes and in all of your work, and that's and it's also something I think characterizes this new younger generation, that they certainly are aware of the past, but not necessarily subject to the dismemberings of it. They're sort of thinking very positively and optimistically, moving towards a future with respect to a present, being responsible in the present. So all three of you have been taking risks. You're brave, you've been courageous. And I think that's something that definitely came out in the series and from what I know of you and your work. So risk and courage is our next theme, and I want to show a few clips from that. Let me get to it. So there's that image again, and you can see the space that they were just speaking about.
And yes, I think it's one of the strongest memories to realize that you just have to express things and take the risk. It's not just about fashion, it's about art, it's about expression. So people need to feel it and people need to enter your universe. And this is a really important thing to me.
I think the most important media is social media. If it wasn't for, I guess, that Facebook page, I never would have believed in myself enough to say I'm a photographer. It's because I had constant feedback from thousands of people I don't even know.
But I think for the next generation in 21st century, what is very interesting is like how you can actually help people to believe in themselves. Much more than just create art only. It's like how you can actually make them starting the journey that they need to start for themselves. To believe in themselves and to risk something, even if they're gonna lose something.
Okay. So, again, all three of you kind of merge these concepts of fashion, art, photography to varying degrees, music. I know at least two of you play music. Omar, I'm not sure if you do or not, but so you're sliding in and out of these modes and these genres, right? So do you find that the risk is greater in one realm over another, or in confining or being confined to one genre over another? Because I know at least Alun, probably all of you don't want to be confined in one specific genre where you're not really allowed to make art in other modes besides photography, for example. So I guess I want to ask if the strength of your work lies in one particular medium or in pluralizing that, and what risks might you have taken in choosing one mode over another? Let's go with Omar.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, that is not the critical question. The question is, which best way can I share my ideas? You know, some ideas are more suitable for writing. Some ideas are, for some ideas, writing is more suitable. For some others, you need a moving image or you need photography. So it's the other way around, as far as I'm concerned. But I sometimes have to make a choice. Like, for instance, every portrait that I shoot, I actually write it down first. Like there is a monologue. I have I could actually put a book out with a text for every single image. It probably will happen one day. But I understand that right now we are in a sort of visual era. People need images. People need images, travel much faster. They go much further. They're easier to remember. I guess if it was in the 1920s, I would have had to put out a book, and, so sometimes you have to make choices. And sometimes it can be complicated. Like, I really like this text, but hey, let me start with the image, and maybe in a couple of years, I'll publish something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Alun or Selly, do you have any thoughts on a riskier genre over another or not?
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, I think it has always been a way to be, exploring several other types of artistic expressions, film, installation. All of that has, from the beginning, fed fashion. And the fact that when I came back to Dakar, I was straight into an art collective. I think it's part of it, and that's why it's part as well of the DNA of the brand to collaborate constantly and to just make sure that when something happens for fashion, all of the music, photography, film, all of those genres are convoked to make sure that the message that I want to infuse into the garment is loud enough, visual enough, and immersive enough. And I think it's I don't see it another way. Actually, I think it became quite organic, and even it's a characteristic of the era we are living in right now, to be multi-talented, because the tools, the technology, the mindset permits it. So yeah, to me, it's as natural to be a fashion designer, to make VR, to write, etc. It's just part of it.
Yeah, I feel like that is one of the things that differs a bit in this generation. I think you're hitting on that, because some of the older generations of artists were almost branded in a way where they needed to be known for a particular kind of art and stay in that lane.
Sure.
And I think it definitely is changing now to where you're all exploring in so many interesting ways and seeing those genres and those messages intertwining and reaching greater audiences through that multiplicitous nature of it. Alun, and I know you also are hoping to kind of break out of strict photography and thinking about AR and VR and installations and things like that. So did you want to offer any thoughts?
Absolutely, and especially going back to that question about if we think that the risk is greater, I actually don't think that the risk is greater, but I think that it's great to take a risk, and I even looking back, I know that after studying abroad, a lot of my fellow artists here, going back to Senegal, I was always often confronted with people telling me, trying to work with people, and they would tell me hey, wake up, this is Africa, this is not possible, you're not in the West, your ideas are far too stretched out. But then, and it was when I actually saw documentaries like the Afripedia, and then I see the work of those artists, and they're taking risks, and that's when I realized that we're not, at least back then, it changed now, but we're not a lot that have new things to put on the table, but we are willing to take that risk. And to sort of touch on briefly on just exploring new avenues, I think that we are submerged with information. There's way too much info out there, and people are just looking for that info that's different, something that's niche and that's innovating. And innovation only happens when realms collide. I think of Omar, for instance. I think I was with you, Amanda. We went to his place. He designed a house like a true architect. He worked with an architect, but you could tell that there was a dialogue, there was a conversation, there was a whole concept behind it. It was just not a building. It was a building with a soul. And so to me, Omar is an architect. Selly is a filmmaker. And I think the more we actually explore on those different journeys, the more we enrich our own journey as in what we want to do. Yeah, they're all connected. Going back to your first question, the art speaks to each other. It's one family, same tree.
We actually had an audience question that maybe one of you can elaborate on because it relates to what we're talking about. So he says, Raymond, to all, do you think you have to take more risks or less risks than artists in the past? So I don't know.
Well, it's not like we have to take more risks. Art is risky because you pour your heart out. It's even riskier now because when it hits back much faster and much harder. So I guess that's the risky element, the increased risky element in being an artist right now. I don't know what you guys think.
No, I agree. So I was just gonna say, the risk is this. It's everything's live nowadays. So
I know
we cannot sleep. This is it. It's like a live soccer game. If you miss that penalty kick, they're gonna get you at the end of the game. So there's a lot of risk.
So let's see. I think we have a few other questions coming in, so I still want to leave some time. And I want to show the third set. So let's move on to the last kind of topic I've been thinking about, that I noticed that you all think very poignantly about, which is the future and the city itself, and how global conversations, like you've all been mentioning, like the one we're having right now, are becoming more and more critical and just happening so fast and all the time, and really creating and coloring our world, amplifying it in so many ways. So I wanted to show a few clips about that topic. The last set of clips I'll show you all.
Simply using the word Africa is loaded. People have so many ideas of what Africa is.
This house is very powerful and strong of many energy and many wills to change the city and to make people see the city how it really is. I see the culture that surrounds us in that alternative scene. I see that culture as a photography of a super huge movement that is taking form, but we don't see the big picture now because we are so involved in it. And culture is essential today. It's super important for people like us to express ourselves and to be able to live from that expression. This is our world. This is our alternative, and this is we giving the image that needs to be seen of our country, far from the politics that are doing God knows what.
Moi, ce qui me choquera toujours, c'est quand je suis revenue au Sénégal en 2010, on m'a demandé pourquoi. Pourquoi je ne suis pas restée en France, pourquoi je suis rentrée ici, parce qu'il n'y avait rien à faire ici. Et pour moi, Omar Victor Diop, Roudia et Selly Raby Kane notamment, il y en a beaucoup d'autres, sont des gens qui ont compris ça, qu'il fallait revenir au Sénégal et investir ici et développer selon leur secteur d'activité quelque chose, parce que tout reste à faire ici, et si c'est pas nous qui le faisons, qui va le faire, quoi. On va pas attendre encore 50 ans ou 100 ans pour changer les choses. On n'a plus de temps à perdre, quoi.
All of these people that need an outlet to express or to show what it is that they're doing have found a place in another Africa. But it's about having an audience that wants or even has the capacity to believe that something other than war and strife and problems exists. We have contributors all over the world. It's just really collapsed this idea of distance and this idea of conversation being possible with people anywhere on the planet. It's like being a media channel makes the internet powerful, is that it has the opportunity to bring democracy. People are finally getting to the place where they're hungry for this type of coverage. That means that we're making a difference and showing how creativity really has the power to influence.
So I think the last artist and also Selly really talked about creativity and culture as being essential and is something that we need right now. And especially, you know, that was a few years ago, even especially now in COVID-19, like we need art, we need culture, we need all of you to help guide us through this really intense time, right? And as all of you have been saying, and just in those clips, like we're also connected at a breathless pace in some ways. So I've been thinking a lot about that and how important conversations like this are, and your artworks are to all of us to just get us through all of this, and to think about our positionality in the present in so many different ways, especially with how scary things are right now, and then what we need to do to create our future, a brighter one that we can all be a part of and proud of in a lot of ways. So I guess my last set of questions are related to those ideas about the future, and also the city itself. So, but first off, I want to back up a little, and since this has been a few years since this was filmed, all of you have been doing so much since then. You've created a lot of amazing things. So how has your work changed since this series was created? And Alun, I know it inspired you to move back, as was mentioned, those clips and you mentioned. So what have each of you been doing over the last few years, and how might this series or other works inspired you? Dealer's choice.
Well, for me, it's very particular because I came back to Dakar on March 9th from Paris. And actually, I had spent a week in Paris because I had a meeting with my gallery. It was like the unveiling of the new project, which was about the future. Because you know, my two previous series were Diaspora, which was about the legacy of, you know, Africans shining across the world from the 15th to the 19th century. And then I did Liberty, which was sort of the same work, but focusing on the history of Black protests across the world. And then I wanted to do the last part, which was about the future. And the project was almost completed, and it had a very dystopian aspect, a lot to do with environment and living together, connecting for real. And then I was somehow, what's the word? Rattrapé par la réalité. How would you say that? You guys help me out. You francophones.
Reality.
Yeah, like caught by, like reality caught up to this project. And so I put it back in the studio. I'm cooking it again, and it's going to be interesting.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I hope so.
Selly or Alun?
Yes, since the Afripedia series, I think it was shot in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. And that's when we did the Alien cartoon collection. That was a very important moment in my creative journey, because that's when I think everything was released, expressed, all the creative weirdness was shown to the world. But let's say since that moment, it was, I think Alien cartoon was a moment where we created an immersive world, where we created some decorum, where we wrote a story, and showing that at that moment made me start exploring film, start exploring design, start exploring storytelling in many other fields. So I think since then, what happened is that that type of hyperactivity and multidisciplinarity was really pushed until today, when I know that fashion and film and writing are as important to me as making garments.
Can I jump in real quick about Alien cartoon? Selly,
Yeah.
This was the moment where you've really, really allowed us to enter your universe, because we could look in from the window and we loved what we saw, but we could never walk in. But Alien cartoon, it's when you really, really opened the doors. And I remember it was at a railway station, and there was a sort of moment happening, and you were at the core of it. There was a fashion show, installations, and everything. And I remember walking out of that and like, wow, this girl. Yeah. Oh yeah. Respect.
I remember.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Legendary.
Yeah.
Guys. No, I really miss doing fashion shows like that. But at the same time, I'm wondering, I mean, a bit of a conflict. Is it reasonable to put that much money into an event today? Is it, and that's I mean, I think that's what the crisis is infusing into us as a brand. We need to know where we put money. We need to know that when you put that much money in a show, well, maybe you can do it in another way. So it's what we're exploring right now. But Alien cartoon was definitely an important moment. And I think even for music, it was important, because that's when Ibaku got his project out. And that project as well was massive. So yeah,
it makes me think of this whole idea of like taking risks again. It's just like putting yourself on the line, and to sort of like rebound on the question of Amanda, I want to say that like what binds us as like this like new generation of like African artists is that like we sort of like trying to like tell the story from our point of view, but like even though yes we'll be telling that story to foreigners and Westerners, but before that we're also telling it to Africans, because there's a lot of Africans out there that are not necessarily aware of like their cultural heritage, how rich it is. But even before that, we're telling that story to us, and at least tell me if I'm wrong, Omar and Selly, but like on a personal level, I know that like, I am part of that generation that was born, like my parents were right at the independence of the country. And in some families, they didn't even like speak in the native language to the children. So like you kind of like grew up with like half of your heritage, or like, you know, part of your heritage has been censored, you know, because it's been regarded as not good enough or not pristine enough. So there's this journey of going back to claiming your legal right, you know, claiming your legal heritage. And that's how I feel with after, like, you know, since 2015, I feel like this is what I've gained, you know. I feel like today I feel more at home than even when I was born, you know, in Africa. I feel even more closer to Africa than I was as an infant.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think another related thread of questioning is then about the city, because you know, you were all drawn to it, either back to it after you've gone away, or through the work you've already been doing, like alien cartoons. So and I noticed in Afripedia, there's always these beautiful, vibrant shots of the city, whatever city they're in, and it just makes you fall in love with it and really want to be there. Like, they did a really good job of capturing that energy that is so specific to each of those cities. And so I wanted to ask each of you how you see the city in terms of your work, or maybe personally as well, and whether or not it has informed your process. And I think Alun maybe, I think, veers away from the city at times, but yeah.
Well, for me, I can only create here. I've realized it. I used to fight that, but now I own it. I embrace it, and I think it's a privilege. My first artist in residency, it was in Malaga. That's where I had the idea of the Diaspora series, my first self-portraits. But you know, I was there for 6 months, but I had to fly back to Dakar 2 weeks to shoot the series and then go back. I just couldn't. When it's a commercial project, yeah, I guess I can. I happen to do commercial work outside, but when it comes to creating, there is this whole thing that people don't see. You know, all these hours you're seemingly watching TV, but you're not even seeing the TV. You're just like cooking things in your head, and you're not talking to anybody. We all have these weird moments. For me, this can only happen here in Dakar. It's 90% of the creative process, and the shooting and the retouching is just 10%. And for me, it can only happen in Dakar. It feeds me. Gosh, I love this place. I do.
Too.
Yeah.
I think I've been obsessed with my city when I came back after my studies. I was born and raised in Dakar. I graduated here, then I went to France to study. I spent, let's say, something like 5 years abroad, and then came back. But when I came back, it was at a specific moment in 2008 when I feel like the creative wave of the city was so loud, and there was this, you know, this subculture, alternative scene that was forming, that was getting together. So it was a time where it was just stimulating in all possible ways. So studying Dakar came from that point, and it just became a part, some type of constant news that is always in the background of the collections. But now I think it's becoming more than that. It's becoming a true subject of research. And the thing that makes us so close to our city, besides emotional factors, besides familial factors, there is something that is happening here, and that is, it has a name. And I think it's what I try to capture through fashion and through film, through writing stories. There's a richness in the way that technology, urban frenzy, heritage, magic, there's a specific blend that is happening in this city, and that is just fascinating. And I think it's important to put it into image so that we remember as youth, and remember as a country what we have and value it. And besides that, to put it in competition with what other people say that we are. But I think the most important today is to refresh the memories of people that live here, and then from that the perception will organically change.
Alun, did you want to add anything? And I'm going to go to audience questions after that. We have so many.
All right. Okay, I'll be quick then.
Oh, no.
I just wanted to say that, like, on a personal level, I know that, like, what inspired me is the silences, actually. I'm very drawn to silences, but it doesn't mean that, like, I have to be in a place that's silent to get inspired. On the contrary, I will go to Dakar, which is actually a very vibrant city. There's a lot of energy, but even in that constant noise and, you know, all this vibration, there's always like spaces where, you know, like time sort of like stands still and it just speaks to you. So I'm always after those moments in Dakar, and I keep seeing those. It's almost like this is a funny comparison, but it's like moments like movies, you know, like as if I'm watching a movie every time I'm in Dakar, and I'm just like seeing those like epic scenes, and they just like tell me, all right, this is your script. Here's your script, you know, in that silence.
Nice.
I feel you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, all of you. So I'm going to move on because we do have a lot of questions coming in. And if it's okay with the three of you, we're going to go a little bit over since we had some technical difficulties and some latecomers.
That's fine.
Is that okay? All right. So there's a question that I think a couple of people seconded that I wanted to put forward. And it's from, if I can say Natalia or Natalia, I wanted to pick up on some things you have said. Could you all talk some more about memories and immaterial patrimony as the source for the honest or authentic, away from stereotypes and ethnographic visions? She also wants to hear about skin. The screen is skin, the image is skin. Clothes is that which covers our skin. And that skin is being something that mediates in inside and an outside. So I suppose there's two kind of ideas there. Culture, sort of a ephemeral cultural patrimony, and then the idea of skin. So I don't know if any of you want to pick up on that.
Sorry, Amanda, I missed the beginning of the question.
Oh, sure.
On the patrimony. What's the question?
So I think this person is interested in knowing more about memories and immaterial patrimony as the source for a sort of authentic experience away from stereotypes, is what it sounds like.
Okay. I would like to answer on that part. I think last year, I think it was already 2 years ago. My God, in 2018, the report African Patrimony was released by Felwine Sarr and Bénédicte Savoie, and I think it's all the questions and interrogations and urge to read the 8 volumes, I don't know if it's 8 or 10, but all the volumes of general history of Africa, just all of those for me was the expression of a thirst of scientific knowledge that covers the ensemble of the territory and of the continent, and just understand better their history besides the ways your family have intervened in the history of the country, besides what is told to you by family voices. And why is the patrimony important is that you get to share something via the, how can I say it? You get to tap into tools, ways of life, visions of the world that are not shared because they are supposed to be shared by you who are part of your culture, who comes from your country, and it is not done. And the best people to do it are the people who are part of that region of the world. So I think going deeper into what we have as Senegalese people, as trans-African artists, is where the most refined part of our contribution to the world, that's where it's hidden. And I think that process of research has a double importance. The first importance is that reconnects you with what you have. And the second one is that it shows you that you can, that what you have will permeate your art, but it will also, I don't know how to say it, but just revive a set of tools that you're actually sleeping on. And there are so many examples for skincare, healthcare, mental care. There are many, many things that we have, and that the transmission stopped at a certain point. And right now, going back and studying it, it's asking to the grandparents, whoever. I think it's the most radical route to take.
I like that. Do either one of you want to? Yeah.
I just what I want to say is that our African nations are very young, and I think for the last 60 years, I'm talking about the republics and the nations, you know, the modern forms of African societies. These are relatively young, and I think we've been too focused on growing up as nations, and we've been a bit lazy when it comes to remembering who we were and what we can use in that heritage to grow even faster, you know. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I presume what Selly and Alun are doing. We are putting a mirror in front of our people to tell them and remind them that they are great, but this greatness has been here for a while. And there are still so many things that we can get from, I mean, just the example of feminism. Feminism, we've been at the forefront of feminism for a while. Hey, we've been in matriarchy for thousands of years. The Nigerian Igbo women somehow saved their society at some point when they fought back against the new rules of the British rule. There are things that we can get in there that we can use and share with the world. That's what it's about. I don't know if that answers that question, but that's what I believe in, really.
I think it sure does answer the question, and it's exactly what you're saying, Omar. We have to take a leap, take a look back in order to leap forward properly. And I think one thing's for sure is that, like, today, and I think that's where I believe that we win, because no outsider can tell us who we are, because the mirror has been so well polished over the past few years that, like, no one can be like, hey, no, you can't fool me. This is me, and I know who I am. I've seen myself today. I'm actually seeing myself right now.
So we have a lot more other questions coming in. So I think I'm going to skip that one for now. So Kelly, Bowen Kelly, to all panelists, the majority of you have created works that could be classified as Afrofuturist. So what should we keep an eye out for in terms of the next wave of Afrofuturist aesthetic? And outside of Dakar, which creative hubs should we be visiting in West Africa? I have my own ideas, but I'll let you take that. I know, Alun, especially well, all three of you have been talked about as Afrofuturists, so you might resist it or lean into it. So Alun, what about you?
Yeah, I know that, like, you know, I've been a lot of people have been saying that, like, I've been doing Afrofuturism, and I know that, like, on a personal level, when I create my work, especially, it was like that series Edification, the kid with the VR goggles, glasses, and but, like, I always felt like that it was extremely contemporary. Like, it's like you would go down to a store in Dakar, you could buy those goggles easily, but it's just that, like, in the head of people, seeing an African kid with, like, modern technology means future, and going back to that, I think I'm not against it, because I feel like every avenue, going back to that branding idea, you know, at the end of the day, you want to put that on a shelf. You want people to be caught by something, but the package, that wrap, is nothing. You know, what's important, it's the inside, because once they're in it, and if it's like, you know, consistent, then they'll keep like sinking in, like, and the root will sink into the soil. I know I've used that a few times, but I really see that as like a foundation kind of image. You know, we have to have solid foundations.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Regarding Afrofuturism, I think it was, I leaned in that genre, and I felt for many years that I was part of that, let's say, visual and aesthetic world. But today I realized that it was for lack of a better expression and a more fine-tuned term of what is happening here when we are curious about the future, when we are in perspective, when we are in speculation. So I think it's, I don't know who was speaking about laziness, but it's also, yes, it's also, I think, part of my job and the job of people such as yourself or Ibaku, j'en sais rien, but part of that to just sit and understand exactly what we are saying when we explore time, knowing that in many of our cultures, we don't have the same perception of time as a linear phenomena. And it has, that perception of a more circular time has been present for millennia. So I don't know if I am, I even think that I'm not an Afrofuturist. So I really don't feel connected to that group anymore. And I have a problem with what Alun Be is saying, just the juxtapositions of ideas, African technology, boom, it makes, it's a speculation. No, technology has been present in our civilization for ages. So yes, I think I'm out of the family. I don't know which family I will create for myself, but yeah.
I think we're saying the same thing. Sorry to interrupt. I think
Yeah,
that like people are not used to see technology in Africa, but it has been there, you know, and it's here right now. And that's why like sometimes they see an image with technology and they immediately think of the future of Africa. No, it's now, it's in the past too, you know, it's so it's more like, for me, that project was more like a look, more so of a look into the past than actually a leap into the future. But it was a look into the past and how to leap into the future. That's how it was to me, at least when I did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
I can, no, it's going to be very short as an answer. You can call my work whatever you want it as long as you look at it and try to understand it. I'm not against labels if there are vehicles for understanding. It doesn't bother me. I don't consider myself an Afrofuturist because maybe I don't know the history of the movement enough, and also I'm self-taught and I came through the window when I was 30-year-old, so I don't really belong to movements. But what matters to me is that you go over the labels and get interested in what I have to say.
Yeah, and find some way to relate to it. It doesn't necessarily matter what you call it, as long as it's having an impact and making a difference in some way. I think that all of you are thinking about that, thinking past those kinds of confines. But I think it got popularized because of Black Panther, of course, and so then people are sort of obsessed with it and trying to find works that they think maybe fit into that category. And I don't think it's necessarily top of people's minds or artists' minds when they're creating that work. But since Omar was just talking, there were a couple questions that came in specifically for you that I wanted to put out there. One wanted to know if you were influenced by Kehinde Wiley.
I saw that question.
Yes, because of the use of your colorful backgrounds. The other person asked a similar question about West African studio portraiture, those histories there like Seydou Keita, Malik Sidibé.
Mama Kassé.
Mama
So
Kassé.
I start with the Kehinde question. I believe it was from Raymond Gonzalez, right? Kehinde is a friend. He's my brother, he's my mentor, he's almost my neighbor, he's everything. But believe it or not, it took me a while to realize who Kehinde was. Because like it's maybe after a year after the first time we met, because I had him over at my place for lunch. I was introduced to him through a friend, you know, those emails, hey, I have a friend who's coming to Dakar, can you guys meet? I said, all right. So we were in contact for about a year. I never took the time to really look at his work and know what he was doing until someone sent me the photos. And I was like, whoa, people are going to think I'm, you know, well, no, but it actually just happened that our works in some in some periods of our career, our works have been very similar. But he's a big brother, both in the arts and in life. And I owe him a lot in terms of, you know, navigating this world that is still new to me. So, yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, Kehinde Wiley has an artist studio project in Dakar called Black Rock, and that it's specifically geared towards people outside of Africa coming and doing studio residencies on the continent, because there frankly aren't enough of those in existence. And so he really wanted to chip away at that. And I know that the artists that have been there so far, a lot of them have been American and just have had so little exposure to the amazing creativity happening on the continent. And so they spend the time, you know, in Dakar meeting people like Omar and having that influence their practice and broadening their perspective. So I think it's what he's doing there is really important. So I wanted to interject about that project. So please look into it if you have a chance. So let's see. Another question would be, what is the one thing you'd like your arts to contribute changing in Africa or in the world? And if you could summarize the message of your art in one sentence, what would it be? That's a tough one.
It would be one sentence for me. It would be, quote unquote, you are a part of it. You are a part of it. That's what I would say to my fellow Africans. You're part of this history that we're still writing. You're a big part of it. Don't let anybody you know, tell you that the world is happening elsewhere and that you're just on the outskirts. You are at the center, just like everyone. And to the other non-African people, I would show our past and tell them you are part of it. You know, this legacy of slavery, all the hardship we have gone through, we need to share it. If we don't share it, we cannot share a future. Everybody has to acknowledge it. It's not about taking responsibility, taking ownership. All the perpetrators are not here anymore, but it needs to be acknowledged. And then we can have a positive look at the future. So we are all part of it being the past and the future and now. Yeah.
I think Alun said something similar last time I spoke, where that history of the transatlantic slave trade, all of that bulky history is traumatic, yes, but it's not an open bleeding wound anymore. It's a scar for those of you practicing today. And that's really stuck with me as just something to think about in terms of what is being done now by these younger generations of artists like you. So Alun, do you have maybe one sentence that you would say?
I would like to say that, like, you know, what we do as artists is we take impressions and turn them into expression. You know, we take like a feeling, and we trying to like descend it into like the material world. But as we do that, and it goes back to what Omar was saying earlier, that it's our way. It's a mirror. It's a way for culture to sort of like describe itself through culture. So as you describe yourself, just be true, be you. Don't try to like see like it seems like me, Selly, and Omar, we all have like somewhat, you know, very similar messages, but then we express it in such like a different way. You know, we like in different universes, but yet we're saying the same thing. But it's because, like, you know, we have our own voices. And I think that's important of like not trying to copy someone else, just like express what you feel right there. You know, that's how I would sum it up.
Mhm.
Selly, do you want to add?
Yeah, I would echo what both of you said. I think it's very important to stress that out, that we are all part of it, and now more than ever we are obliged to be a part of this same world, and you cannot strip yourself or protect yourself of anything that is happening at the other side of the globe. So I think more than ever it's important to share who we are and to make sure that we connect with the whole of humanity. And I think this crisis has shown as well that the continent of Africa was not just at the periphery of what is happening in the world. And it was good for the African countries as well to realize what they have as strategic advantages, and to know that today what is awaited from us as artists is to just contribute into the archaeology and into the digging up and presenting to the world what we have to contribute, really. And that contribution is important. It saves lives, because it saves the lives of people that practice that art, but it touches people, and it opens up some channels of communication that maybe policy cannot attain, that maybe economics have difficulties touching. So we are part as artists of that complex matrix of having sounder and better relationships with each other.
Where was that at?
It wasn't me.
What's happening?
Like, that was a punchline, you know. Boom. Thank you, Selly. You did good.
So Lisa McDonald had a question I thought was good, because in about a week we should have all been together in Dakar for Dakar, for the biennial that has now been postponed, I think maybe for 2 years until the next one. So it usually takes place every year, Dakar. So does it provide a good exposure to what is occurring? Or do you all think that there's a better event to get a glimpse of the art scene in Dakar? Because there are numerous other ones that happen. So do you think that Dakar is representative, or do you have other recommendations? That's a quick one.
Dakar is the bomb. You know? I think it's really good. I think what I love about Dakar is the biennial is that like every time I've been to like the Dakar, I always felt like I could have been anywhere in this world, because it was so international. And I think it goes back to what Omar was saying. Like, you know, I remember being at that train station in 2016 with like DJs from South Africa and DJs from New York, but then all these people from all over the world, and just like being really confused of like, am I in Tokyo? Am I in Sydney? I was confused, but it felt good. It was a good confusion. So I love that card in that sense. You know, it's global.
There is the parcours, which is it's like an association of all the galleries in Dakar. Every December, I believe, they have a sort of 15-day circuit with openings, new openings every day, and it's mostly local artists, but it's very good art, because I think what makes it stand out is because there is far less pressure than the Biennale. Dakar is, you know, for many artists who have less international exposure, it's one chance every other year to show the world what you do. So that comes with a lot of pressure, and pressure is not good for creativity anyway, and it's not good for it becomes more event management and planning than an artist opening. You know what I mean? And for Le Parcours, there are much smaller budgets, much smaller places. People have time. The setting is always like after work. People linger, and I really love the Parcours. It's every December, right, you guys?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
each year.
I really like it.
Yeah, it's a bit of not a party atmosphere, but certainly it's congenial and casual and fun, and you're just talking to a lot of neat people and wandering to different openings, and yeah, it's it's good. Selly, do you want to add anything or?
No, I had the parcours in mind as well. I think those are the both most important event in Dakar for contemporary arts and for studios, artist studios. I think the parcours though there's a bit more intimacy and there's a bit, something that a bit more conviviality. The Biennale is really massive, huh? It's like,
it is huge.
I don't know what the metrics are for the in, but for the off, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's about 250, I think, the last time I checked. Wow. Exhibitions.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And maybe given our current circumstances, things like parkour will be more imperative and maybe get a little bit more attention, but hopefully not blow up to the status of Dakar, right? Because just thinking.
Yes, I think both are important for different reasons. But what is cool with the parkour is that it happens every year. So each year there's an event that is gradually, taking an important space. And even artists from other countries, from West Africa, come and exhibit during the parkour. It's an opportunity as well to meet buyers and to have something that is, a qualitative event that happens every year and where you can sell actually.
I like that there's also representation of a lot of African galleries as opposed to American or European ones. And I think that's really important because there's so many great galleries on the continent and they tend to not get as much exposure in Western countries. So I found that to be encouraging. So we have two kind of similar questions, and I know we're sort of running out of time. We still have so many, but Ashley Evans wanted to know about what you think is the most important social media platform. And do you think it's better to post daily to generate content, or do you more thoughtfully post and make sure that each one is, however rare, treated carefully? So there's that kind of question about generating content for social media and how often. And then Joseph Underwood wanted to know, how do you reconcile the lack of official education in photography or video in Senegal with the current popularity of those art forms in contemporary art and social media? They're kind of related questions. So I don't know. Softball to somebody.
As for the social media, I love Instagram. I love the gram. Because it's I love the gram because you make it whatever you want to make it, more so than Facebook or the others that I don't even know. And also about the question about posting, it's not about how often you post. I can stay 8 weeks without posting anything, but always make sure you have a story to tell. If you don't have anything to say, you can post a random image and a hashtag, it's okay. But don't post because you have to. Don't post on the schedule. Nobody wants that, not even you. And it's about sharing. Make it personal, but not too much. You have to protect your identity and your privacy. But feel like you're throwing something into somebody's window. So make it look good. Throw somebody that throw something that adds at least joy or inspiration or something. But don't post on a schedule.
Either one of Selly or Alun?
I'll echo what Omar says. I mean, social media, I think my favorite platform is as well Instagram for obvious reasons. And I'm not a fan of all the apps that make you schedule your posts. I think there's a lack of, there's something that you lose doing that. There's a type of spontaneity, something organic that you lose when you plan what you're about to share with people that follow you. And I believe I'm not a huge poster as well. I'm not overtly present on social media because I think I have a complicated relationship with social media. But I mean, business-wise and creatively, I just realized that it's important to share your work process for people that want to, embark on that journey. And for those people, I think I've been posting much more. So I forgot what the original question was, but definitely Instagram, and definitely storytelling, having something meaningful to share with people. And yes, that's how I do it.
So I think,
Totally agree.
yeah, we're running a little short of time, and I think all of us have other places to be, everyone. But I think this would be a good last question, because it thinks about aspirations and aspirational endeavors. So what have you done, or what do you aspire to do that would mark your realization of your goals as an artist? So what is your dream exhibition, fashion venue, etc.?
Oh.
I think that, like, the dream, I mean, the dream of being on a journey and accomplishing like bigger things, at least right now, keeps unfolding, and it's great. But I really feel like the greatest thing that I could do as an artist, it's to give back what I've received, actually. So a lot of, like, right now, a lot of like my personal like thinking as an artist, it's like, how do it actually started with you, Amanda, because I used to go to North Carolina and do like some workshops there, photography workshops, and as I was doing it, people would ask me, hey, how come you're not doing that in Senegal? And it's true, we don't have any photography school. So I think this is a great time to actually think of, like, because it was a struggle for us. I'm talking on a personal level. I didn't know anything about like how to make a certificate of authenticity. How many prints do you do? Like, I mean, there's so many rules out there. And if it wasn't for people that actually are kind enough to share them with you, you lost. So there's like codes and like, things that you have to know. And I want to pass them along at this point. This is where I'm at. That would be my greatest achievement. If I don't get to that, it's like I would fail, I think.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's exactly, if I want to be, if I were to be remembered for something, I hope that it would include me helping, showing the mirror to younger artists and show them how much potential they have, and help them realize that potential, because that was given to me. Somebody had to look at my photos and say, what are you going to do with these? Because I didn't know. I didn't even want to post them on my Facebook. I hope that to somebody I'm going to be what Kehinde has been to me when I completed Diaspora, and he was the first one to look at them. And he told me, you need to put these out. You're not keeping them, right? If it wasn't for him, I never would have shown them. These were selfies for me, and
Really?
I want to have that impact too. Yeah, really. It's Kehinde. Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
But why weren't you going to show it?
It was an experiment for me, and I shot this series because I had no model around. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna wrap myself into clothes and trying to look like this image because I really love it, and I see myself in this guy and everything. That's the beginning of the story. So you need that voice that is reassuring, but that, tells you the truth. If it was bad, he would have told me too, and I want to play that role too.
I love that series that you're amplifying the histories of these amazing heroes, these characters that we've had over however many years. And I love that project because, you're stepping into that role. So there is a mirror there for you as well in some ways, but you're also really showing that history to people that I just don't think we get that kind of information, especially here in America. We don't know who those people are. I mean, I do because it's part of my job, but so many other people don't. And it reminds me just briefly of a show on at the Smithsonian right now about heroes. And I love thinking about those people throughout history that should be our heroes, that should be remembered. And I think of all of you as becoming our heroes right now as well. You're creating really exciting future for all of us, and you're making us look more deeply about who. And then Selly, I don't know if you had something else to add to that question.
Yes, I think it's the same preoccupation of giving back, of sharing, of making sure that through your art you're useful to your community, because I think it's important, it is needed, and there are no, I think we are the generation when being an artist becomes, you know, understandable as an economical model for families or for the country, and the careers, artistic and designer careers, are more valorized right now. But still, there is still a bit of a mystery as to how you make it in such industries. And I think more and more youth are looking for templates to see, when you're a fashion designer in Dakar, how you can push your work forward, how you can share your universe, have a solid enough voice to make it a brand. So all of that are part of reflections on my end onto how do we give back, how to create a toolkit so that people can make a living out of their art. And that's important. I think being in a collective serves that purpose. Integrating people into that collective serves that purpose, and just being in deepening the study within our field serve as well that purpose, because your voice gets clearer and more refined. So yeah, it gravitates basically to around the notion of giving back, but in the best way possible.
Agreed. So yeah, I think that unless you have something else to add, Alun, looks like you're going to say.
No. I was just.
I think. Yes, I think
the glass is empty.
Yes.
Almost, yeah. The last drop, you know.
I have so enjoyed talking to the three of you today. I really appreciate you and what you do so much, and it's been an absolute pleasure to share your viewpoints and what you're doing with more people in our community, a global community. Maria, who has been hosting this, I'd like to thank her and to thank Luke at the NCMA for helping us organize this event. Maria has posted all the information for all three of your Instagram and Facebook so that you can be followed and contacted. And then I also wanted to offer my email address if there's any future questions. There were so many, and there was one actually directed at me that I didn't have a chance to get to. So feel free to email me with any other questions that you might have about the event or that I can answer. So Maria, if you could put that up, that would be great. Any final thoughts from any of you before we head off?
Well, I hope to see you guys soon. Like for real.
IRL?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was gonna say one thing that I actually saw on the Afripedia, the New York video. Like at some point they say creativity has the power to influence, you know, so don't take that for granted, you know, like, and artists don't need talent, they need audacity more, you know, they need more audacity than talent. Yeah.
Be brave.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
Victor. Bye.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
À bientôt.
À bientôt. Au revoir.
Au revoir.